My name is Ethan, and for the last 7 years, I thought I was living the kind of life people dream about. My wife, Anna, and I had a beautiful home, successful careers, and a relationship that I believed was built on trust and love. We were that couple everyone envied at gatherings, the ones who seemed like they had it all figured out. But all of that changed one night, with one text message that would unravel my entire world. It was a Tuesday evening, just a regular night. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner while Anna worked late again. She had been staying late at the office more frequently lately, always claiming that the new project her company was working on was taking up all her time. I wanted to be supportive, so I tried not to complain. After all, work was stressful for me too, and I figured we'd get through this busy patch together. I missed her, of course, but I trusted her. That night, I was relaxing on the couch when her phone, which she had left on the kitchen counter, lit up with a notification. I wasn't usually the type to check her phone. It was her personal space, and I respected that. But this time, something made me look. It wasn't her usual text tone, and I thought it might be important, maybe work-related. When I glanced at the screen, my heart stopped. The message was from someone named James. It read, "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again." My stomach dropped, and a chill ran down my spine. My eyes darted back to the message, hoping I'd read it wrong, hoping that somehow this was just a misunderstanding. But I knew it wasn't. The words were clear, and the implication behind them was impossible to ignore. I felt a mix of emotions hit me all at once: confusion, fear, and a deep, gut-wrenching pain. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that Anna, my wife, my best friend, was cheating on me. I put her phone down, my hands shaking, my thoughts racing. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her as soon as she got home? Should I wait and see if there was some kind of explanation? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was right there in front of me. I sat on the couch, my heart pounding, my mind a blur. Time seemed to slow as I waited for her to come home. When she finally walked through the door, her smile faded the moment she saw my face. "Ethan, what's wrong?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. I wanted to ask her if she loved me. I wanted to ask her if everything we had built together meant anything to her. Instead, all I could do was stare at her, the words catching in my throat. "I saw your phone," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I saw the message from James. The color drained from her face. She looked like she'd been slapped, her eyes widening in shock. For a moment, she just stood there, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find the words. "Ethan, it's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "It's not what I think?" I repeated. "Then what is it, Anna? Because it looks pretty clear to me." My heart ached as I spoke, each word feeling like a weight pressing down on my chest. "You're cheating on me, aren't you?" Tears filled her eyes, and she took a step toward me, reaching out as if to touch me, but I pulled away. Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But it's not what you think, Ethan. I never wanted this. It just happened." I stared at her, the world around me seeming to blur as the full weight of her words sank in. She was admitting it. Admitting that she had betrayed me, that she had been with someone else. The pain was overwhelming, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. The woman I loved, the woman I had given everything to, had thrown it all away. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why, Anna? What did I do wrong?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't you," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "It was never about you. It was just, work has been so stressful and I felt so disconnected. James was there and I made a mistake. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." I felt a wave of anger wash over me, the pain twisting into something dark and ugly. "You love me," I spat. "How can you say that after what you've done? You've been lying to me for how long? How long has this been going on?" She looked down, her shoulders slumping. "A few months," she whispered. "It's only happened a few times, I swear. I know that doesn't make it better. But I need you to know that I never wanted this to happen. I got lost. Her words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. But instead, I just stood there, staring at her, my heart breaking. I need you to leave, I said finally, my voice hollow. I can't look at you right now. I need space. Anna's eyes widened, and she shook her head, her tears falling faster. Ethan, please, she begged. I don't want to leave. I want to fix this. I want to fix us. But I couldn't. I couldn't look at her, couldn't be near her. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. Go, I said, my voice cracking. Just go. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked out the door, her sobs echoing in the empty house as she left. I sank onto the couch, my hands covering my face as the tears I had been holding back finally came. Everything I had thought I knew, everything I had believed in, was gone. The woman I loved had betrayed me, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of a life that had suddenly fallen apart. After Anna walked out that night, the house felt like a stranger's place. It was too quiet, too empty, and every little thing seemed to remind me of her, of us. Her favorite blanket was still thrown over the armrest of the couch, her slippers by the door. It was strange how, in a matter of hours, a home filled with love and warmth could turn into a place I couldn't stand being in. I slept on the couch that night, not because I wanted to but because I couldn't bring myself to go into our bedroom. Our bed, the place where we'd held each other, shared late-night laughter, and whispered dreams. It felt like a lie now. I felt like a stranger in my own life. The next morning, I woke up to the sunlight streaming through the windows, the ache in my chest still as raw as it had been the night before. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts swirling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. How did we get here? How did I miss the signs? Was I not paying enough attention to her, to us? Or had she just been that good at hiding everything? I tried to get up and go about my day as if things were normal. I tried to pretend that I could still function, that I could make it through without her. I brewed coffee, took a shower, and even sat at my computer, staring at work emails. But nothing felt real. Everything felt empty. By the time noon rolled around, I realized that I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I needed to get out, to breathe. I grabbed my jacket and left, not even sure where I was going. I just drove, my mind racing, the streets blurring around me. I ended up at the one place that always felt like a refuge, my friend Mark's house. Mark and I had known each other since college. He was the kind of friend who never judged, who never asked too many questions unless you were ready to talk. When I showed up on his doorstep, he took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "Hey man," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "What's going on?" I walked past him, collapsing onto his couch, my head in my hands. "It's Anna," I said, my voice cracking. She cheated on me." Mark's face fell, and he sat down beside me, his eyes filled with sympathy. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," he said softly. "I had no idea." I nodded, my throat tight as I tried to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill over again. "I didn't either," I whispered. "I thought we were fine. I thought we were happy. And then I found that text, and everything just fell apart." Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he put his hand on my shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "You know this isn't on you, right? This is her mistake, not yours. You didn't do anything to deserve this." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this wasn't my fault, that I hadn't somehow driven her into someone else's arms. But the doubt was still there, gnawing at the edges of my mind. "I don't know, Mark," I said, my voice cracking. "Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I didn't make her happy anymore." Mark shook his head, his expression firm. "Don't do that to yourself, Ethan. You're a good guy and you've always done right by her. This is on her, not on you." I stayed at Mark's for a few hours, the comfort of his presence helping to steady me, to make me feel a little less alone. He listened as I talked, as I tried to make sense of everything, and he didn't offer empty platitudes or try to make me feel better. He just listened, and that was what I needed more than anything. By the time I left, it was getting dark. I drove home, my heart heavy, dreading the emptiness that waited for me there. When I walked in, the silence seemed to echo, reminding me that everything had changed. I forced myself to eat something, though I barely tasted it. I tried to watch TV, but nothing held my attention. Finally, I decided to call my mother. I hadn't told her yet, hadn't told anyone besides Mark. I knew she'd be devastated for me, but I needed to hear her voice, needed to feel like I wasn't completely alone. When she picked up, her voice was filled with warmth. "Ethan, how are you, sweetheart?" Hearing her voice made the tears that I had been holding back finally spill over. "Mom," I choked out, my voice breaking. "Anna, she cheated on me." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a soft gasp. "Oh, Ethan," she whispered, her voice filled with pain. "I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how much that hurts." I nodded, though she couldn't see me, the tears streaming down my face. "I don't know what to do, Mom," I said, my voice barely audible. "I don't know how to fix this." She was quiet for a moment, then she spoke, her voice gentle. "Honey, there might not be a way to fix this. Sometimes, when trust is broken, it can't be mended. And that's not your fault. But you have to decide what's right for you. If you think there's something worth saving, then maybe you can work through it. But if not, then it's okay to let go." I swallowed hard, her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to let go, didn't want to give up on the life I had built with Anna. But I also didn't know if I could ever forgive her, if I could ever look at her the same way again. "I don't know if I can do that," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I still love her, but I don't know if that's enough." My mother sighed softly, and I could hear the sadness in her voice. "Love is important, Ethan, but so is respect, so is trust. You deserve someone who values you, who treats you with the love and loyalty you've always given. And if Anna isn't that person, then maybe it's time to walk away." I stayed on the phone with her for a while longer, her words helping to steady me, even as they made me confront the painful reality of my situation. I wanted to fight for my marriage, but I also knew that Anna was the one who had to decide if she wanted to fight too. When I hung up, I felt a sense of emptiness settle over me. I went to bed that night, the sheets cold and unwelcoming, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. I didn't know if Anna and I could ever find a way back to each other. Didn't know if I could ever forgive her for what she had done. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in limbo, couldn't keep pretending that everything would magically fix itself. I had to confront Anna, had to find out if there was anything left to save, or if it was time to let go of the life I had thought was ours. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread. I knew what I had to do, but the thought of confronting Anna made my stomach twist. I needed answers, needed to understand why this had happened and if there was any hope left for us. I couldn't keep avoiding the reality of what had happened, no matter how much it hurt. I called Anna, and she picked up on the second ring. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Ethan?" she asked. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk, Anna. Can you come over tonight?" There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she finally answered. "Of course," she said quietly. "I'll come after work." The rest of the day felt like an eternity. I couldn't concentrate on anything, my mind replaying our last conversation, wondering how it had all come to this. I wanted to believe that there was still something worth saving, that Anna and I could find a way through the pain. But I knew that if we were going to move forward, I needed to hear the full truth, no matter how much it hurt. When Anna finally arrived that evening, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were red and puffy, her face pale. She stood in the doorway, looking at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We moved to the living room, sitting down on the couch, a heavy silence settling between us. I could feel my heart pounding, the weight of everything we needed to talk about pressing down on me. "I need you to be honest with me, Anna," I said, my voice cracking. I need to know everything. I need to know why this happened. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I understand, she whispered. I want to be honest, Ethan. I owe you that. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she tried to steady herself. It started a few months ago, she said softly. I was feeling overwhelmed with work, and I felt like we were growing apart. I know that sounds like an excuse, but it's how I felt. And then James, he was there, and he made me feel like I wasn't invisible. He made me feel wanted. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my emotions in check. Why didn't you talk to me? I asked, my voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me how you were feeling? Anna shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know, she admitted. I was scared. I didn't want to admit that I was struggling, that I was unhappy. I thought I could handle it on my own. And then I made the worst mistake of my life. I never meant for it to go this far, Ethan. I never meant to hurt you. I stared at her, my heart aching with a mix of love and pain. Did you love him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Did he mean more to you than I did? Anna shook her head quickly, her eyes wide with fear. No, she said, her voice trembling. It wasn't love. It was a distraction, an escape. But I never loved him, Ethan. I love you. I always have. Her words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that her feelings for me were real, that what we had wasn't all a lie. But the betrayal was still so fresh, so raw. Do you still talk to him? I asked, my voice tight. I needed to know if she had truly ended it, if there was still something between them that she wasn't telling me. She shook her head, her tears flowing freely now. No, I ended it, she whispered. I told him it was over, that I wanted to make things right with you. I haven't spoken to him since. I blocked his number, deleted everything. I want to fix this, Ethan. I want to fix us. I looked at her, my heart aching. Part of me wanted to pull her into my arms, to tell her that we would get through this, that everything would be okay. But another part of me was still so hurt, still so angry. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship had been shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. Do you really think we can fix this? I asked, my voice filled with doubt. After everything that's happened, do you think we can ever be the same? Anna looked at me, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. I don't know if we'll ever be the same, she said softly. But I think we can be better. I think we can learn from this, grow from this. I know it won't be easy, and I know I've hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I want to try. I love you, Ethan, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. I took a deep breath, her words weighing heavily on me. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that we could move past this. But it was hard to let go of the anger, the betrayal. I looked at her, the woman I had loved for so many years, and I saw the regret in her eyes, the pain she carried for what she had done. I need time, I said finally, my voice barely audible. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Anna, but I need time to figure out if I can. She nodded, her tears still falling. I understand, she whispered. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting. We sat there in silence, the weight of everything we had lost pressing down on us. It wasn't a solution, and it wasn't a promise that everything would be okay. But it was a start, a step toward understanding, toward healing. I didn't know if we would make it, if we could ever truly move past what had happened. But I knew that I wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. After Anna left that night, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It wasn't the kind of calm that came from things being fixed, but rather the calm of knowing that I had taken a step toward facing the truth. It was painful, and it left me feeling raw and vulnerable, but it was necessary. I had to know if there was anything left between us worth saving, and now, at least, I had the answers. The days that followed were difficult. Anna and I agreed to give each other space, to let things settle before deciding what to do next. I spent my time trying to sort through my emotions, trying to figure out if I could ever forgive her, if I could ever look at her without seeing the betrayal. I knew that forgiveness wasn't something that could be forced, that it had to come naturally in its own time. Mark checked in on me often, always ready with a distraction or just an ear to listen. I appreciated his presence, his support, even though I knew that, ultimately, the decision of what to do lay with me. My mother called too, her voice always filled with love and concern, reminding me that no matter what happened, I was not alone. One evening, as I sat in the living room, staring at the wedding photo of Anna and me that hung on the wall, I found myself wondering if I was ready to let go. In that picture, we looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. I wanted to believe that the love we shared was still there, that it could be salvaged, even if it wasn't the same as it had once been. I picked up my phone, my hands trembling slightly as I typed out a message to Anna. "Can we meet? I think it's time we talked again." She responded almost immediately, her message simple, "Of course, just tell me when." As I put the phone down, I took a deep breath, my heart heavy. I didn't know what the future held, didn't know if we could ever truly move past this. But I knew one thing: I wanted to try. I wanted to see if there was still something between us worth saving, if we could find a way to move forward, even if it meant starting from scratch. When I saw Anna waiting for me at the cafe, a strange mix of emotions flooded over me. She looked different, not in appearance but in the way she carried herself. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes looked wary, and I could tell that she was afraid of what might happen today. It wasn't easy for either of us, and as I approached her table, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Hey," I said softly as I sat down across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the fear and hope that lingered there, just like in our last conversation. We sat in silence for a while, neither of us sure where to start. The tension between us was thick, but so was the sense that we were both trying, both willing to take the steps needed to figure out if there was anything left worth saving. "I've been thinking a lot," I finally said, breaking the silence. "About everything. About us." Anna nodded, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Me too," she whispered. "I know I hurt you, Ethan, and I hate myself for it. I hate that I betrayed your trust. But I want to make things right. I don't know how." I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "It's going to take time," I said, my voice soft but firm. "If we're going to move forward, we have to do it step by step. We can't just go back to the way things were. We have to build something new, something better." Anna nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand," she whispered, "and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you, Ethan. I've always loved you, and I want to prove that to you." Her words hit me with a mix of emotions: love, pain, hope, and fear. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that we could rebuild what had been broken. But trust wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. It would take effort, patience, and time. "I think we need to start over," I said slowly, the words coming out cautiously. "We need to take small steps. We can't just jump back into our old life and pretend that none of this happened. We have to learn how to trust each other again." Anna nodded, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. "Whatever you need," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm here, Ethan. I want to fight for us." I gave her a small, sad smile. "It's not going to be easy," I warned. "There are going to be days when it's hard, when I still feel angry, or when I still don't trust you. And you have to understand that. You have to be patient with me." "I will," she whispered, her eyes locked on mine. "I promise. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan. I want to prove to you that I'm worth your forgiveness." We talked for a long time that day, more openly than we had in months. I told her about my fears, about the doubts that still lingered in my mind. And she listened without trying to make excuses, without trying to shift the blame. She apologized again and again, and I could see how much she regretted what she had done, how much she hated herself for the pain she had caused. It wasn't a perfect conversation. There were moments when my anger bubbled up, moments when I wanted to lash out, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. But I knew that if I wanted us to move forward, I couldn't hold on to that anger forever. I had to let it go, even if it was hard, even if it took time. By the end of our conversation, we had agreed to take things slow, to start over as if we were getting to know each other again. We would go on dates, spend time together, but also give each other space when needed. We wouldn't rush into anything, we would let things develop naturally and see where it led us. The next few weeks were strange but hopeful. It felt like we were walking on shaky ground, trying to rebuild something that had once been solid but had crumbled beneath us. We went on dates, simple outings to the park, to our favorite restaurant, even just walking around town. It was awkward at times, but there were also moments when it felt like the old us. The laughter, the easy conversations, the little inside jokes that we had always shared. Anna was different. She was more attentive, more open, and more vulnerable. She wasn't hiding anymore. She would tell me when she was feeling scared, when she was feeling overwhelmed by everything that had happened. And in turn, I tried to be honest with her too. About my fears, my doubts, the moments when I still felt the sting of betrayal. One evening, we were sitting on the back porch, the sun setting behind the trees. It was one of those quiet moments that I had always loved, the kind of moment that reminded me of why I had fallen in love with her in the first place. Anna looked over at me, her eyes soft. "Do you think we'll ever really be okay again?" she asked, her voice filled with both hope and uncertainty. I looked at her, my heart aching. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we're on the right path. We're both trying, and that's all we can do right now." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I want to be okay again," she whispered. "I want us to be better than we were before. I know I messed up, but I'm not going to give up on us." I reached for her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. "I know," I said softly, "and I'm not giving up either." We sat there in silence, the weight of everything that had happened between us still heavy. But there was also a sense of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to move forward together. The following days weren't without their challenges. There were still moments when I found myself doubting, when I wondered if I was making the right choice by trying to rebuild with her. There were still moments when I wanted to ask her questions that I knew would only reopen old wounds. But each time those moments came, I reminded myself that I was choosing to let go, choosing to forgive. Not just for her, but for myself. One weekend, we decided to take a short trip out of town. A way to get away from everything, to focus on just the two of us. We booked a small cabin by the lake, packed a bag, and left our phones behind. It was the first time in a long time that we had truly disconnected from everything else, and it was exactly what we needed. We spent our days hiking, cooking together, sitting by the water, and just talking. There were no distractions, no reminders of the past. Just us, trying to find our way back to each other. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were making real progress. I could see the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had always been my best friend, and I knew that she was still there. One night, as we sat by the fire, Anna looked at me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm so grateful for you, Ethan." I looked at her, my heart swelling with a mix of emotions. Love, pain, hope. "I love you, Anna," I said softly, "and I'm willing to keep fighting for us, as long as you are." She smiled, tears spilling down her cheeks, and she leaned in, pressing her forehead against mine. "I love you too," she whispered. It wasn't a happy ending, and it wasn't a quick fix, but it was a beginning. A new chapter in our story, one that we were writing together, one day at a time. And for now, that was enough. Returning home after the cabin trip felt like a small victory. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was a sense of normalcy between Anna and me. We had shared genuine moments of connection and laughter, and it gave me hope that maybe we really could rebuild what we had lost. But with each step forward came the reminder that trust was still fragile, and the pain of betrayal was something I couldn't just ignore. Life settled into a new routine for us. We went to therapy together, working through our feelings with Dr. Bennett. Anna remained consistent. She was open, honest, and willing to do whatever it took to regain my trust. She gave me access to everything, her phone, her social media, her schedule. And for a while, it helped. It helped to know that she had nothing to hide, that she was committed to being transparent. But transparency wasn't the same as trust. and I still struggled with letting go of the doubts that lingered in the back of my mind. There were times when I caught myself overthinking, when she would get a call from an unknown number, or when she was running late from work, and I would feel my stomach twist with fear. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that she was telling the truth. But the fear of being betrayed again made it hard to fully let my guard down. One night, about a month after our trip, we were sitting in the living room watching a movie together. I noticed that Anna seemed distracted. She kept glancing at her phone, her fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. My heart started to race, and I tried to push down the doubt that was creeping in. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "Yeah," she said, her voice a little too quick. "Everything's fine. It's just work stuff." The familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. I wanted to trust her, wanted to believe that it really was just work. But the doubt wouldn't go away. "Can I see?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Anna looked at me for a moment, her face softening. She nodded, handing me her phone without hesitation. I took it, my hands trembling slightly as I scrolled through her messages. It was just work, emails from her boss, texts from coworkers about an upcoming project. There was nothing suspicious, nothing that should have made me doubt her. I handed the phone back, a wave of guilt washing over me. Anna gave me a sad smile, her eyes filled with understanding. "It's okay, Ethan," she said softly. "I get it. I know it's going to take time." "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "I want to trust you. I really do. But it's just hard." Anna nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know," she whispered. "I hurt you, and I know that it's going to take time to rebuild that trust. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan. I'm here, and I'm willing to keep proving myself to you, as long as it takes." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," I said, my heart aching. "Thank you for being patient with me." She smiled, leaning in to rest her head on my shoulder. "I love you," she whispered, "and I'll keep showing you that, every day." As we sat there, the weight of everything that had happened between us still heavy, I realized that trust wasn't something that could be forced. It wasn't something that could be earned back with one grand gesture. It was something that had to be built, piece by piece, with every small moment of honesty and openness. And that was what we were doing, slowly but surely. The next few weeks were a mix of ups and downs. There were days when things felt almost normal, days when we laughed, cooked together, and felt like a team again. But there were also days when the fear and doubt resurfaced, when I found myself questioning if I was making the right choice by staying. Anna was patient, always willing to talk, always willing to reassure me. And that helped. It helped to know that she wasn't giving up, that she was willing to put in the work. One evening, we decided to go out for dinner. A small gesture, but one that felt important. It was our first real date night since everything had happened, and I could tell that Anna was nervous. She had dressed up, her hair done, her makeup flawless, and when she smiled at me, I could see the hope in her eyes. We went to a small restaurant we used to frequent, a place that held good memories for both of us. As we sat across from each other, I could feel the tension slowly easing, replaced by a sense of comfort. We talked about work, about our friends, about plans for the future. It felt normal, like the way things used to be, and for a while I allowed myself to believe that maybe we really could get through this. Toward the end of the meal, Anna reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "I know it's still hard," she said softly, "but I feel like we're making progress. I feel like we're getting back to a good place." I looked at her, my heart swelling with a mix of emotions: love, hope, and a lingering hint of fear. "I think so too," I said quietly. "It's not perfect, but we're trying. And that's all we can do." She smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Ethan," she whispered, "and I'm going to keep proving that to you, every day." "I love you too," I replied, my voice cracking, "and I'm willing to keep trying, as long as you are." We finished our dinner, the mood lighter, the tension between us finally easing. As we left the restaurant, Anna slipped her arm through mine, leaning against me as we walked to the car. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. A reminder that, despite everything, we were still here, still together. When we got home, we sat on the porch, the stars twinkling above us. It was quiet, peaceful, and I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. I looked over at Anna, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light, and I realized that I wanted to keep fighting for us. I wanted to keep moving forward, even if it was hard, even if it took time. "Do you think we'll ever fully trust each other again?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Anna looked at me, her eyes filled with both hope and uncertainty. "I think we will," she said softly. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But I think that if we keep trying, if we keep being honest with each other, we'll get there." I nodded, her words resonating with me. Trust wasn't something that could be rushed, but it was something that could be built, slowly, carefully, with each small step forward. And as I looked at Anna, I realized that I was willing to keep taking those steps, one day at a time. It wasn't a perfect ending, and it wasn't a guarantee that everything would be okay. But it was a promise that we were both willing to fight for each other, to fight for the love we still shared. And for now, that was enough. As much as we were trying to move forward, I knew there was still something we hadn't truly confronted: the past. It was like a shadow that hung over us, a constant reminder of everything that had happened, everything that had gone wrong. And while we had tried to rebuild, to focus on the future, I knew that we couldn't fully move on until we had faced what had torn us apart. One evening, after a particularly long and emotional therapy session with Dr. Bennett, I realized it was time. We needed to talk about James. We needed to confront what had happened between them and why it had happened, if we had any hope of truly moving forward. That night, after we got home, I looked over at Anna, my heart heavy. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes tired, her face drawn. I knew she was trying her best, knew that she was exhausted from the emotional work we had been doing, but I also knew that we couldn't keep avoiding this conversation. "Anna," I said softly, sitting down beside her, "I think we need to talk about James." She looked up at me, her eyes widening slightly, and I could see the fear there, the fear of opening old wounds, of reliving the pain she had caused. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I need to understand," I said, my voice cracking. "I need to understand why it happened, why you chose him. I need to know what I was missing, what I wasn't giving you." Anna's eyes filled with tears, and she looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. "Ethan, it wasn't about you," she said, her voice trembling. "I know that's hard to believe, but it wasn't. You didn't do anything wrong. I was the one who was lost. I was feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I felt like I had to be strong, like I couldn't show weakness." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But why James?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you turn to him?" She looked up at me, her tears spilling over. "He was there," she said softly. "He was a distraction. He made me feel wanted, made me feel like I wasn't invisible. And I know that sounds awful and I hate myself for it, but it's the truth. It wasn't love, it wasn't anything real. It was just an escape." Her words cut deep, and I felt the familiar sting of betrayal, the pain that had been with me since the day I found out. "Did you ever think about me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Did you ever think about what this would do to us?" Anna nodded, her face crumpling as she began to cry. "Every day," she whispered. "Every time I was with him, I thought about you. I thought about how much I was hurting you, how much I was risking, and I hated myself for it. I wanted to stop, but I didn't know how. I felt trapped in this cycle of guilt and shame, and I didn't know how to break free." I looked at her, my heart aching. I could see the pain in her eyes, the regret that weighed on her. And in that moment, I realized that as much as I had been hurt, she had also been struggling. She had been lost, and she had made a terrible mistake. But she was here now, trying to make things right, trying to be the woman I had fallen in love with. I'm not saying that what you did was okay, I said, my voice softening, because it wasn't. It hurt me more than anything I've ever experienced. But I also know that you're not the same person you were then. You're trying, and I see that. Anna looked up at me, her eyes filled with hope and fear. Do you think you can ever forgive me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, her question hanging in the air between us. Forgiveness wasn't something that could be forced, something that could be given just because someone asked for it. It was something that had to come naturally, something that had to be earned. And I knew that I wasn't fully there yet. But I also knew that I wanted to get there. I think I'm working on it, I said finally, my voice cracking. I think I want to forgive you, but it's going to take time. Anna nodded, her tears still falling. I understand, she whispered, and I'm willing to wait. I'll keep fighting for us, Ethan. I'll keep proving myself to you, every day. I reached for her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. I know, I said softly, and I'm willing to keep trying too. We sat there in silence, the weight of everything that had happened between us still heavy. But there was also a sense of relief that we had finally confronted the past, that we had finally talked about the thing that had torn us apart. It wasn't a solution, and it wasn't a promise that everything would be okay. But it was a step, one that we needed to take if we had any hope of moving forward. The following days were different. There was a sense of openness between us that hadn't been there before, a sense that we were no longer hiding from the truth. We still had a long way to go, still had wounds that needed to heal, but we were no longer avoiding the pain. We were facing it together. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch, Anna turned to me, her eyes filled with emotion. Do you think we'll ever be happy again? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, my heart swelling with a mix of love and pain. I think we're getting there, I said softly. We're not the same people we were before, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we're stronger now, more honest with each other. She smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. I want to be happy with you, Ethan, she whispered. I want us to be better than we were before. I do too, I replied, my voice cracking. And I think we're on the right path. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can do it. Anna reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. I love you, she said softly. I love you too, I replied, my heart aching with both hope and pain. As we sat there, the sun setting behind the trees, I realized that we had come a long way since the day I had found out about her affair. We had faced the truth, confronted the pain, and we were still standing. It wasn't a perfect ending, and it wasn't a guarantee that everything would be okay. But it was a promise that we were both willing to keep fighting for each other, to keep fighting for the love we still shared. And for now, that was enough. Things between Anna and me were changing slowly but surely. It was almost like we were rediscovering each other, relearning who we were and what we meant to each other after everything that had happened. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when the pain of the past would resurface, moments when the hurt would come rushing back without warning. But we were also learning to create new memories, new moments that were ours, untarnished by what had happened. One Saturday morning, Anna suggested we do something we hadn't done in a long time. Go to the beach. It was something we used to love. Packing a picnic, bringing books, and just spending the day by the water, the waves crashing around us, the salty breeze in our hair. But after everything had happened, the idea of doing something that had been so significant to us as a couple had felt impossible. Are you sure? I asked, looking at her, unsure if I was ready for it. She gave me a small smile, her eyes filled with hope. Yeah, she said softly. I think it could be good for us. I want to make new memories, good ones. I think we need that. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. She was right. We needed to move forward, to start building something new together. And maybe this was the way to do that. Okay, I said, my voice shaky. Let's do it. We packed a bag together, gathering snacks, blankets, and books, and set off for the beach. As we drove, there was a sense of both nervousness and hope between us. Like we were stepping into unfamiliar territory, but we were doing it together. When we got to the beach, the sky was clear, the sun shining brightly overhead. We spread out our blanket, sitting down side by side, the waves crashing just a few feet away. I looked over at Anna, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. She looked at me, her eyes soft. "Thank you for doing this with me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I gave her a small smile. "Thank you for suggesting it," I replied. "I think you're right, we need to make new memories. We need to start over." She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "That's what I want," she whispered. "I want to start over with you, Ethan. I want to be the wife you deserve." The words hung in the air between us, and I could feel the weight of them, the sincerity behind them. I reached for her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. "And I want to be the husband you deserve," I said softly. "I know I've been angry, that I've been holding onto the past, but I want to let go. I want to move forward with you." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she leaned in, pressing her forehead against mine. "I love you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I love you too," I replied, my heart swelling with both love and hope. We spent the day at the beach, just enjoying each other's company. We read, laughed, shared stories, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were really connecting again. It felt like we were two people who loved each other, who wanted to be together, despite everything that had happened. As the sun began to set, we walked along the shoreline, our feet sinking into the sand, the waves lapping at our ankles. Anna slipped her arm around my waist, leaning into me, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I'm scared," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "I'm scared that we're going to fall apart again, that I'm going to hurt you again." I stopped, turning to face her, my heart aching at the vulnerability in her eyes. "Anna, I'm scared too," I admitted, my voice cracking. "But I think the fact that we're both scared means that we're doing this right. We're taking it seriously. We're not taking each other for granted." She nodded, tears spilling over, and I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. "It's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be easy, but I think we're going to be okay." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hope. "I think so too," she said softly. We stood there for a long time, holding each other, the sun setting behind us, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. It wasn't a perfect moment. There were still scars, still wounds that needed to heal, but it was real. It was us, choosing each other, choosing to move forward despite everything that had happened. As we made our way back to our blanket, Anna looked over at me, a small smile on her lips. "Do you remember the first time we came to this beach?" she asked, her voice filled with nostalgia. I smiled, nodding. "Yeah, I remember," I said. "You brought that terrible red wine, and we ended up getting sunburned because we forgot sunscreen." She laughed, the sound light and genuine, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "I was trying so hard to impress you," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I wanted everything to be perfect, and it ended up being a disaster." I shook my head, a smile tugging at my lips. "It wasn't a disaster," I said softly. "It was perfect because I was with you." She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears again, and she reached up, cupping my face in her hands. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. I covered her hands with mine, my heart aching. "You deserve love, Anna," I said gently. "You made a mistake, but you're trying to make things right, and that's enough for me." She leaned in, her lips brushing against mine, and I closed my eyes, the kiss soft and filled with emotion. It wasn't about passion or making everything magically better. It was about connection, about choosing each other despite everything. As the sky darkened and the stars began to appear, we lay on the blanket, staring up at the night sky. I felt Anna's head resting on my shoulder, her hand in mine, and I realized that this was what I wanted. This simple, imperfect moment with the woman I loved. I knew that the journey ahead of us would be long, that there would still be challenges, still moments of doubt and fear. But I also knew that we were stronger now, more honest, more willing to fight for each other. "Do you think we'll ever really get past this?" Anna asked softly, her voice filled with both hope and uncertainty. I looked at her, my heart swelling with love. "I think we already are," I said quietly. "We're not perfect, but we're trying. And that's enough for me." She smiled, her eyes shining with tears, and she leaned in, pressing her lips against mine once more. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a new beginning. A new chapter in our story, one that we were writing together, one step at a time. And for now, that was more than enough. The days that followed our trip to the beach were filled with a renewed sense of hope. It wasn't as if everything had magically healed, but there was a shift between us. A willingness to work together, a shared determination to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Anna was patient with me, and I was learning to be patient with myself. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a moment but a journey, one that I had to choose every single day. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, Anna came into the kitchen, her face looking more relaxed than it had in a long time. "I was thinking," she said hesitantly, "maybe we could start planning a trip, something to look forward to, just the two of us." I looked at her, my heart softening at the hope in her voice. It had been a long time since we'd talked about the future in a positive way, since we'd made plans that weren't focused on just getting through the day. A trip. The idea was appealing, a chance to reconnect and experience something new together, away from the reminders of everything we'd been through. "Yeah," I said, giving her a small smile. "I think that sounds great. Maybe we could go somewhere we've never been before. Start fresh." Her face lit up, and I could see the relief in her eyes. "Really?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. "I'd love that, Ethan." I nodded, a sense of hope settling in my chest. It wasn't about escaping what had happened. It was about embracing the future, about choosing to build something new. And for the first time in a long time, I felt excited about what lay ahead. Work that day felt lighter. The weight of everything that had been pressing down on me seemed a little less heavy, and I found myself smiling more, engaging more with my coworkers. I hadn't realized just how much I had isolated myself until that moment, how much I had withdrawn from everything around me. But now, I felt like I was beginning to come back to life, like I was rediscovering the parts of myself that had been lost in the pain and confusion. That evening, when I came home, Anna was waiting for me in the living room, a small notebook in her hands. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes shining with excitement. "I started making a list," she said, holding up the notebook, "of places we could go, things we could do. I know it's early, but I wanted to start dreaming about it." I smiled, setting my bag down and sitting beside her. "Let's see it," I said, my heart warming at the sight of her enthusiasm. She opened the notebook, flipping through the pages. There were notes, sketches, even some printed pictures she had taped in. She had written down everything from remote cabins to bustling cities, from long hikes to relaxing spa weekends. It was a mix of adventure and tranquility, and as I looked at each suggestion, I felt the corners of my lips turn up. "I love these," I said softly, looking over at her. "You put so much thought into it." Anna blushed, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I just wanted us to have something to look forward to," she whispered. "Something that's just ours." I reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "We'll make it happen," I said, my voice filled with determination. "One step at a time." She smiled, her tears spilling over, and she leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. We sat there together, the notebook open between us, filled with dreams of a future that we were still working to build. In the days that followed, we continued to take small steps, acts of kindness, gestures of love that helped to slowly mend the broken pieces of our relationship. Anna would leave me notes in my lunch bag, little reminders that she loved me, that she was thinking of me, and I made an effort to reciprocate, to reach out, to be vulnerable, to share my fears and hopes with her. We were learning to trust each other again, to be open in a way that we hadn't been before. One evening, we sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. Anna turned to me, her expression serious. Ethan, I know I've said it a million times, but I need you to know how deeply I regret everything that happened. I know I broke your heart, and I know I can't change that. But I promise you, I'm doing everything I can to be the woman you deserve. I looked at her, my heart swelling with both love and pain. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the remorse that she carried with her every day. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I believed her. I believed in her love, in her commitment to making things right. The hurt was still there, but it was beginning to soften, replaced by a sense of hope. I know, Anna, I said, my voice cracking, and I forgive you. It's not perfect, and I know it's not going to be easy, but I want to let go of the anger. I want to move forward with you. Her face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks as she looked at me. Really? She whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. I nodded, my own tears threatening to spill over. Yeah, I said softly. I love you, and I want to start fresh. I want to leave the past behind and focus on what we can build together. She leaned in, her lips meeting mine in a gentle, tender kiss, and I closed my eyes, the tears slipping down my cheeks. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of forgiveness, of love, of hope for the future. It was a promise that we were both willing to make, to choose each other every day, no matter how hard it might be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I pulled Anna into my arms, holding her close, the warmth of her body against mine a reminder of what we still had: love, commitment, and a desire to keep moving forward. We had been through so much, had faced the darkest parts of ourselves, and we were still standing. We were still here, still together. The trip we planned ended up being a quiet getaway to a small cabin by the mountains, a place where we could disconnect from the rest of the world and just focus on each other. We spent our days hiking, exploring the woods, cooking meals together, and just being present. There was no rush, no pressure to make everything perfect. It was simply about being with each other, about reconnecting and remembering why we had chosen to be together in the first place. One night, as we sat by the fire, Anna looked at me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Do you think we'll ever really be okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, my heart swelling with love and hope. "I think we already are," I said softly. "We're not perfect, and we never will be. But we're still here, and we're still fighting for each other. And that's enough for me." She smiled, her tears glistening in the firelight, and she reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "I love you, Ethan," she whispered. "I love you too," I replied, my heart aching with both hope and love. As we sat there, the fire crackling beside us, the stars twinkling above, I realized that the journey we were on wasn't about finding a perfect ending. It was about choosing each other every day, no matter how hard it was. It was about forgiveness, about growth, and about being willing to face the challenges together. And as I held Anna close, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together. One step at a time, one day at a time. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a beginning, a new chapter in our story, one that we were writing together with love, patience, and a renewed commitment to each other.